I don't know what you call it. What do you call that space? The Freedom Home. I wouldn't call it a museum, because museums are for things that have died. And that is a very living heritage. And it's about the fight against the old slavery. The civil rights movement here was very deeply inspired by Gandhi, which is why Gandhi is sitting there. And in 1901 in South Africa, Gandhi had done his first civil disobedience on 9/11. We call it the other 9/11. And he had refused to wear the identity badges where society was being divided by race. It was the early days of building an apartheid regime. And he said, we are equal citizens and we will not be divided by race. And I will not wear this badge. He continued that tradition. And in that period in South Africa, he thought a lot about where does real freedom come from. He wrote an amazing book on a ship from England to South Africa on freedom. And my deepest lesson from him, which is the deepest lesson here from the civil rights movement, the abolition movement, was that as long as the myth exists that unjust laws must be obeyed, so long will slavery exist. Because a patent is granted for an invention. Machines have been patented. To claim that a seed is your patentable intellectual property is a claim that you are the inventor. And in fact, we could see the word GMO saying, God, move over. But this enslavement of all life also means the enslavement of people. It means the enslavement of farmers. And Mr. Watkins was so far-sighted to walk away with that 4,000 acre soya bean plant because it was the beginning of the soya slavery. You know, soya's been an Eastern Asian crop, and yet Monsanto says it invented it. After they put a toxic gene for resistance to a herbicide called Roundup, which they also sell. And the seeds are resistant to Roundup, so they sell the herbicide and they sell the seed, and they lock in the farmers into slavery. You have had a very sad and bad decision by the Supreme Court of the United States. It's not the only bad decision. I mean, to treat corporations as people and then to give them freedom of speech in terms of stealing elections is a bad decision. Because democracy is not founded on fictitious people, but on real people. And it's definitely not founded on the stealing of the rights of free people by a few corporate dictatorships who pretend to be human beings and treat the stealing of democracy as their free speech, taking away the free speech of all as their free speech. Well, the decision I'm referring to, the other bad decision, is a case of a farmer called Bowman, who used to go buy seed from an elevator, grain from an elevator, because Monsanto's contracts were very expensive and he didn't want to buy Monsanto seed. He just went and got grain. And then he'd plant it out. And Monsanto sued him. And kept suing him till the case went to Supreme Court. And you know, when it's day for you, it's night for us. So I was staying up all night to read this decision. And the Supreme Court judges said that the fact that Monsanto had put in a gene and now they own the patent. They didn't own the patent only on that particular generation of seed, but they owned it for the next 20 years. 20 generations of seed. So Baumann had no rights to go buy grain and plant seed. This is not just taking away Baumann's freedom to plant and grow seed. It's taking away the seed's freedom to grow itself. Because what is seed? But that which can be planted again and again. Bija is the word in Sanskrit. Ja means life, and bija is that from which life arises on its own again and again and again and again. It is the source of life. And after they've given us toxic food and given us cancer, they'll bring the patented cancer drug. And they keep making profits at every level. Nothing goes wrong for them. Everything they make wrong for the planet, everything they make wrong for the communities is a profit opportunity. And that is the real conflict in our times. That every seed that doesn't grow out, which is a problem for nature, it's a problem for farmers, is an opportunity. Every toxic that creates disease is an opportunity. So why on earth would they want to end hunger and disease? They need more of it. We, as part of the earth community and as part of the human community, are the ones who have to find the ways to end hunger and malnutrition, to end unemployment. A lot of the reason Navdanya does what it does is, of course, to protect the earth. That's our first inspiration, to give back to the earth. And the beauty is, the more you give back to the earth, the more the earth gives to you. She's not like Monsanto saying, give me a royalty. I won't feed you till you pay me a royalty. There are other chemical warfares going on to which a totally blind eye is being turned. And at one level, what we have to do is end that chemical warfare. It now carries on through genetic engineering, because GMOs are nothing but chemical warfare at the genetic level. You shoot a gene into a plant, you don't know how you're modifying it, it's not with knowledge of the genome, and the only ability they have is to shoot toxic genes. Herbicide-resistant crops and Bt-toxic crops. 30 years ago, 25 years ago, when they were promoting GMOs, the story was, we'll be able to produce every trait under the sun, we'll grow food on the moon, we'll grow food on toxic dumps. All they've done in 20 years is give us 2 traits in 4 crops. Corn, canola, soya, cotton. That's it. 2 traits, both toxic traits. And above them they said, we will end the use of chemicals. The Bt toxin crops, like the Bt cotton in India, has increased the use of chemicals. The Roundup Ready crops in this country have increased the use of chemicals. Why? Because instead of controlling pests and weeds, they have created super pests and super weeds. Half of America's farmlands, 70 million acres, overtaken by super weeds. And what they're recommending now, because Roundup is failing, is the spraying of Agent Orange that was sprayed on Vietnam, 2,4-D, a component of Agent Orange. And DuPont actually has an application for a Agent Orange resistant corn. Now the Roundup resistant corn has already killed the soil organisms, has created pathogens. These pathogens are going into the food system. A lot of the corn is fed to animals. In this country, there's a whole new problem created in the last few years. That Roundup Ready corn is leading to abortions and stillbirths in animals on a scale that has become an economic problem for livestock farmers. And it's because there are new pathogens being created because the beneficial organisms have been killed. You know, when do we get diarrhea? When our beneficial organisms are overtaken by pathogenic organisms. And all toxics kill beneficial organisms. We've done a study on the soils in the cotton areas. 22% beneficial organisms killed in the first 4 years of planting. I'm sure if we do the study again, much higher levels will have been destroyed. But it isn't just other species that are being killed. Studies done in Cornell showed the monarch butterfly was killed when it was fed the pollen of GMO corn. And then the Roundup Ready crops are spraying Roundup, which kills everything green that it comes in contact with, including milkweed on which the monarch feeds. So from every direction there's an assault. The pesticides and the Bt pesticide plants are killing the bees, which is why we have this tragedy of the colony collapse disorder. As I said, the only reason the GMOs are being pushed is in order to own life, patent life, and collect rents. So if, at the time of colonialism, you could declare land as empty and take it over, now you declare life as empty and take it over. And I'm so very happy that our patent office has just rejected a very broad patent of Monsanto wanting to own all crops that have climate resilience. And because we have a strong movement in India, even though we were forced to change our patent laws, we put in safeguards. A real invention means it should be something new, right? And since life is not invented, biological processes will not be counted as inventions. So the court said, sorry, you're saying you have invented this seed and all it's for future generations. The seed makes itself, it's a biological process. And the one gene you add already exists. You didn't create that either. So you don't get it. And we have fought 3 cases through Nagania. This beautiful tree that has natural pest control properties called the neem. And after the Bhopal disaster, I started a campaign, no more Bhopal's plant a neem. 10 years later, it's patented for pest control. I fought a case with the Greens of Europe and the International Organic Movement. 11 years we fought the case, and we defeated the US Department of Agriculture and the WR-based company. There's a company in Texas called Rice Tech. Yeah, there's this strange new culture where they think you put tech against anything and you are the inventor. So Rice Tech stole our basmati from Dehradun. We fought that case and we have most of their claims struck down. More recently, Monsanto patented an old Indian wheat variety which has low gluten, or no gluten. The gluten gets silenced. And as you know, so many people have gluten allergies now because of industrial wheat and industrial processing of wheat. That was an interesting case because as soon as we challenged it, Monsanto withdrew the patent. Biopiracy is inevitable because Monsanto doesn't invent anything, it has to steal. So when it claims climate resilience, it has stolen climate resilient crops from countries like India where we grow salt-tolerant rice and we use it to deal with cyclones and tsunamis, or drought-tolerant crops. They can't invent drought tolerance. It's a multi-genetic trait. They steal the drought-tolerant crop, put a toxic gene and say invention. And their crops must grow as monocultures because agriculture based on chemical warfare adapts certain plants to that warfare. In the Green Revolution, to chemical inputs, with genetic engineering to the toxic genes. Therefore, it must be a monoculture because particular plants get adapted to that input. Ecological agriculture has to be a garden of biodiversity. Ecological agriculture cannot be a monoculture. And you can read, I read violence in the landscape when I see a monoculture and I see genetic uniformity. I can feel the pain of the soil organisms and I can feel the extinction of our pollinators in that landscape. We have another campaign going on GM bananas, because they think they're going to put iron into bananas. It's 0.44 milligrams. They say, okay, we increase it double, triple, 4 times. It'll still be 3,000% less efficient than the amaranths and the greens and other sources of iron that we have. I have called this disease the monoculture of the mind. For golden rice, 2000 I wrote a paper, a blind approach to blindness prevention. Because it's also about the battle of the minds and the hearts. Our minds are occupied with the myth that industry feeds us, corporations feed us. I gave you the figures. It's 10% toxic food. With labeling, it would become 0. We can expand the small-scale agriculture system that is the real feeding from 72% to 100%. That should be our project for the next 15 years. From 72% to 100%. Different parts of the world, different priorities will get expressed. In your part, the labeling issue is vital. You get labeling, GMOs are dead. Everywhere not cooperating with laws on patents on seed, which is why we have seed freedom, don't obey the laws on patenting. GMOs, patents gone, GMOs won't spread. They're not spreading GMOs because they love GMOs. What they love is their profits. And the profits go the minute seed is not patented. And we have to liberate the seed. That's right, total seed freedom. And the final way in which we have to resist GMOs is to reclaim our own money. You know, when you say you have to go and sell cheaper in the poorer colonies, why? Because the subsidies that should go to bringing local organic food at affordable levels across society, $400 billion at the world level, go to subsidize the corporations. I happened to be at a meeting where Will Stark, your Secretary of Agriculture, was there, and when a question was asked with a slowdown, we need to increase food stamps. So will you cut the subsidies in order to have more money for feeding the poor? His answer was, we'll never touch the subsidies. And many of the people coming to food stamps and soup kitchens are faking poverty. Given that that's the situation, and that money is not, the government takes tax money to run these programs. The Boston Tea Party, I remember, was about no taxation without representation. I think we need a movement that says no subsidies without our approval, because it's our money that you're using. And we won't subsidize corporate toxic food, we will subsidize local organic. Yes. All tools need assessment. And in the context of a technology for agriculture and food production, the first assessment is, what is its ecological impact? This is called biosafety. Why are the corporations so scared of that assessment? They should not be. The labeling issue is connected to that. Second, any technology should be assessed for its social impact. If a technology like BT cotton kills 284,000 Indian farmers, I don't want it. I want those farmers to live, and we have enough innovation and technologies to grow more food without killing our farmers. That's what Vandana promotes. And no matter what, it could be a brilliant technology. Every technology has to go through a democratic appraisal by the society it is supposed to serve. The fact that 40 million had to be spent to undo the right to know and the democratic right to choose of the citizens of California means it's a technology that those who are promoting that technology know it's inadequate, it's failing, it does have hazards, and we better not let people know. So, and for me, innovation is any new thinking that lowers our ecological footprint, enhances our well-being. On both of those counts, genetic engineering is failing. It's increasing our footprint. Growing Roundup-ready crops and spraying with Roundup is a very heavy burden on the earth and ecosystems, and it is not improving our well-being. Monsanto got in the law on intellectual property and food safety, and Cargill got in the law on the free trade in agriculture. Sadly for them, we had a Seattle, and they had to step back. And WTO, as the former Director General Pascal Lamy said, it's still in cold storage. They can't push it any further. Because now, multilaterally, many governments are on the sides of citizens saying, you can't take this further. So they're now pushing bilateral agreements like the US-India agreement, which got Walmart in, yeah, and it's Monsanto, Conagra, Walmart, the Atlantic Treaty, US-Europe, and the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. All of them are trying to continue the work that they couldn't do through the WTO because people stopped the WTO. GMOs are at the heart of it, intellectual property rights and patenting is at the heart of it, and worse, dismantling local procurement of the kind that allows local schools to get healthy food. Dismantling that is at the heart of it. Now, it might be a US corporation that will target Japan, but that same law will allow that corporation to dismantle healthy feeding programs for schools. If we could stop WTO, we should organize to stop these new free trade treaties. Because they're not about free trade, they are about corporate dictatorship. We've always been told industrial agriculture is more efficient, these monocultures are more productive. That's not true. The smaller the farm, the more it produces, because there's a factor in a small farm that large farms can't have, TLC. The more the diversity, the more the output. There's an assessment we've done, and it's up on our website, on the navdanya.org website, called Health Per Acre, where we said, we calculate the output of farms, monoculture chemicals versus biodiverse, and then we converted that output of diversity into nutrition, which is what we need. Because industrial systems produce commodities, farms and gardens produce food. We can grow enough nutrition for the world and 2 times the current population by intensifying biodiversity and growing more nutrition per acre. Yield per acre measures the commodities that go to drive cars. It doesn't measure food. Health per acre measures the nutrition that comes to the community, to the soil. And so much of the problem of health today is not just the absolute food that people aren't getting, but the nutritionally empty food. Magnesium deficiency, attention deficit, calcium deficiency. I mean, every micronutrient, trace element, mineral and vitamin has been driven out of the food system. We are creating empty mass, full of toxics. We don't need empty mass, we don't need the toxics. We need real food. Monsanto is going to award itself this year on World Food Day, which is 16th of October, the World Food Prize for feeding the world. They're on the sponsorship of the prize. So one of the things we invite you to do is find your local food heroes, and I think LA is full of them. Find your real food heroes who produce real food. And the Seed Freedom movement that we are sowing worldwide is celebrating 2nd October to 16th of October as Seed Freedom and Food Freedom Week. That's the legacy of freedom and liberation we need to fight. 2nd October, because it's Gandhi's birth anniversary, known as the day now, recognized by the UN as the Day of Nonviolence. and Satyagraha, the fight for truth. 16th October, recognized by the UN as World Food Day. 12th October, the March Against Monsanto, again. And the March Against Monsanto is really a march for our basic rights. The real food heroes need to be recognized and honored for a number of reasons, because it's the only way we'll build our food systems that give us real nourishment. But they also need to be recognized because there's a strange psychology that is developed by these corporations who have pretended to be people and get legal personality. They try and become so dominant in our lives that people feel they're too big and we can't change things. But we can, because change begins with us. And the more we recognize the heroes who are making that change in our communities, the more it infects others to get the power to be able to make that change. Now, of course, if Monsanto could put into the World Trade Organization a law that would criminalize seed saving, they're not going to sit back in this time. Their next step will be to criminalize two things: gardening and seed saving. And that's why the satyagrahas of our time have to be seed satyagrahas and food satyagrahas, where we save the seed, replant it, share it freely, and spread it. And with these seeds of freedom, we create gardens of hope. They're going to come and say, oh my goodness, there's bacteria in that organic soil, and that's dangerous for you, it'll kill you. They did shut a little girl's garden in this country already. And in Hawaii, when I was there in January, a major campaign in that GMO-free Hawaii movement was Who Spreads Gardens. She says the health departments are already coming to visit us in moon suits and requiring that the children wear moon suits. We've got to stop that absurdity before it starts. By saying, we know you're going to do this, we're prepared to not cooperate because we know our safety. We know when good soil is organic and healthy. We know when good seed that has come from centuries of testing is safe and fertile. You will not enslave and rob life of its freedoms. Thank you.